agenda, and then we'll do work session afterwards. And so, broadcast, are we good to go?
Chair Brooks, this is VPS. Yes, you are live to broadcast and may call the meeting to order whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. We will call this meeting of Senate Finance to order. And when you get settled and are ready to go, you can call the roll.
Senator Dennis, Senator Kiekefer, Senator Goycochea, Senator Hammond, Senator Ratty, Senator Severs-Gansert, Senator Cannizzaro, Senator Dondero-Loop, Chair Brooks.
Here, and we have a quorum, and we can mark Senator Ratty and Senator Cannizzaro present as they arrive. So we will start this morning with Senate Bill 463, makes an appropriation to the Department of Education to transfer to certain charter schools. And Mr. Thorley will be presenting that.
Good morning. Still morning. Good morning, everyone. Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. I will be walking the committee through Senate Bill 463. This is the BDR that I walked the committee through yesterday evening, BDR S 1181. That makes an appropriation to the Department of Education for transfer to certain charter schools. The total amount of the appropriation is $3.8 million. That's in Section 1 of the bill. Section 1, Subsection 1. However, it is broken out into two chunks. That's in Section 1, Subsection 2. So a total of just over $2 million is available in FY22 as bridge funding for the 12 charter schools listed in subsection 6 of the bill, section 1, subsection 6. And then in FY23, a total of $1.7 million is available to the 9 charter schools listed in section 1, subsection 7 of the bill. So while the full appropriation will be, the $3.8 million will come out of FY 2021, there are maximum amounts available in both fiscal years of the upcoming biennium. In subsection 6 of section 1 and subsection 7, that's where it actually lists the charter schools that are eligible for this one-time bridge funding, and it lists the maximum transfer amount that can be provided to those charter schools. It's important to understand that these numbers, so we're living in budget land right now. Everything for the upcoming biennium is based off of projections, enrollment projections for these charter schools. The maximum transfer amount is based off of those projections. So the identification of these charter schools as being funded less than the FY 2020 hold harmless amount is based off of enrollment projections. If the actual enrollment for these charter schools, say, comes in lower than projections and subsequently they aren't below their hold harmless level, then there will be a true-up at the end of each fiscal year, and they will not get the additional funding if they're not actually below their hold harmless level. So the Department of Education will make quarterly payments to these charter schools, so 4 equal quarterly payments up that equal the maximum transfer amount, and then there'll be a true-up at the end. And the charter schools may have to revert funding if they are not actually below their hold harmless amount. Again, because this is based off of projections. We don't know what's going to actually happen. Same is true for the dollar amounts in subsection 7 and the 9 charter schools listed there. So three charter schools from FY 2022 drop off and are not included in the FY 2023 section in subsection 7. And then the bill becomes effective upon passage and approval, and again, that makes the $3.8 million appropriation for this purpose come out of the current fiscal year FY 2021, and then is available in the upcoming biennium. Happy to answer any questions the committee might have about this bill and how we determine the numbers.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thorley. Do we have any questions from the committee on Senate Bill 463? Senator Dennis.
Thank you. So, yeah, so how did we get, I mean, originally when we talked about this, there was like 9 schools and then it was 7, but this is 12. So how did we get to where we're at?
Senator Dennis, when this question first came up in committee, fiscal staff just on the fly did a quick estimate of what we thought it might be, and that's where the original 7 charter schools came from. But after actually going back and doing the full analysis, it was determined that there are 12 charter schools in FY 22 and 9 in FY 23 that, again, as budgeted with the projections, would be below their FY 2020 hold harmless amount. I would note there are 2 charter schools that are not included in this bill and were excluded from our analysis. They are also projected to be below their FY 2020 hold harmless level, but they are projected to have significant decreases in enrollment in the upcoming biennium due to closure of charter campuses, for example. And so they were just anomalies. The reason they were below the hold harmless level is because they had a significant enrollment decline.
Okay, and from what I'm seeing here, that the largest discrepancy on here is probably what, 500, Beacon Academy, the one that's off the most.
Correct. As just a raw dollar amount, the largest bridge funding amount would be provided to Beacon Academy. That's $549,864 in 22 and $513,388 in FY 23.
Right, and then some of these were really, I mean, they're really close, so it's not like we're having to make up a big, so, okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Severs-Gansert.
Thank you, Chair Brooks. So I appreciate the explanation about the quarterly payments. Are they going to be tracking the enrollment on a quarterly basis too, to match it at the time? Or they do the enrollment at the beginning of the year and then the end of the year and then they adjust at the end of the year? So how do you expect that to happen?
So Senator Severs-Gansert, Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal. So the true-up will occur at the end of the fiscal year. So they will receive the 4 quarterly payments that add up to the maximum transfer amount. And then at the end of the year, when actual enrollment is known, there will be a true-up. So there won't be iterative true-ups throughout the fiscal year.
Thank you. And so for that true-up, is the counts that matter the beginning enrollment and the end enrollment, or just because I think they may have to set aside some money if they lose some enrollment? I know the university, a lot of times people move around after the first of the year, so there could be shifts. And so just want to know the timing of the counts potentially, if it's not quarterly, because it seems like most schools do. We usually just have a count in the fall, but I think we do counts at least a couple times a year now, four times a year.
So staff's understanding is this would be based off of the audited enrollment counts, and if I am wrong, education team, send me an IM. But that's my understanding.
Thank you.
Senator Keycapper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Thorley, I've been getting pinged by one of the charter schools in my district that they feel like they should be on this list and they're not. Has communication happened between fiscal staff and the charter school authority to sort of button down the list and make sure that we're not leaving somebody off who should be on?
Wayne Thorley for the record. Senator Keycapper, fiscal staff has had discussions with the charter school authority. I don't believe discussions have taken place on the individual school level going through each school. happy to provide information if you'd like on the specific charter school.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the committee on Senate Bill 463? All right. Thank you, Mr. Thorley. And we are in day 119. It is 11:30 a.m. We have 7 bills in front of us, many, many things to do, and things start dying if we don't get done. And so with that, if you could be very efficient with your testimony, and that's for the whole day. And at one point, I'll keep an eye on the clock. I will be limiting comment and support and opposition if it starts running long, and we'll just play that by ear. But just be very efficient with your testimony, please. So I'll open it up to support to Senate Bill 463, starting in the room.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be very efficient. At least I will try. Thank you. I hear Victor Salcido for the record on behalf of the Charter School Association of Nevada. Just wanted to express our appreciation for this. For 2 years, it's been said that no school would be in a worse position as a result of this new formula, and this gets us there, I think. And so I appreciate the legislative intent being fulfilled, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next person here in the room in support. All right, seeing none, we'll go to the telephones and see if we have anyone on the phone in support of Senate Bill 463.
Morning. Thank you, Chair Brooks and committee. To testify in support on Senate Bill 463, please press star 9 now. Caller with the last 3 digits, 139. Please press star 6 to unmute. Thank you, caller. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
My name is Jessica Barlow Daniels, Daniels. I am the Carson Montessori Charter Schools Executive Director Principal and the coach of Carson Montessori Student Legislative Team. Our student legislative team wanted to send a special hello to all of you this Memorial Day weekend and say thank you for providing such great civics and action learning opportunities for us to work on this year. Carson Montessori is a governor's designated STEM school. When supplies and materials are needed, if there is not enough money in the budget, staff and students can submit a proposal, and if it is doable, workable, and feasible, it is launched within 48 hours. And I personally pay for it out of my own pocket. When SB 439 first came out, and it did not provide the cost adjustments for charters that it did for district schools, we feared that we would have to commence a process of closing with dignity over a few years. But you have listened to us and our advocates, and you have responded in a way that allows us to continue with our mission. The students, families, and staff of Carson Montessori, thank you for realizing that this funding needs to happen, that district-sponsored schools need to be included in the financial equation. The changes you have proposed this morning are doable, workable, and feasible. We want to say thank you and way to go, Nevada Legislature, to support education and the children of Nevada. Well done.
Thank you.
Currently
Next
in
caller.
support. So sorry, Chair. We are currently in support testimony on Senate Bill 463. If you would like to testify in support, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 125. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Brooks and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Maria Rogers, Maria Rogers, and I serve as Vice President of Sierra Nevada Academy Charter School. On behalf of our school, we would like to take a moment to thank our service members for their service and sacrifice on this Memorial Day weekend. I am a former parent member of 2 children who graduated from Sierra Nevada Academy Charter Schools. My expertise on the board is in finance and human resources. I am here in strong support of SB 463 as we're one of the charters included in the bill. We were granted a charter 22 years ago by Washoe County School District as the first elementary middle school charter in Nevada serving grades K through 8. We are a small and mighty 4-star community school that fosters personalized learning. We currently serve 360 plus students in the North Valleys of Reno, and we are about to fulfill our dream of adding high schoolers as our new building is set to open in August of this year. We are in construction to build a second site for our middle school students and are expanding into high school with the capacity at the new site of 740 students on that campus. We serve a 98% diverse group of students who are at risk for not graduating high school based on state definition of at risk, including approximately 50% of students who participate in the free reduced breakfast lunch program. Our CEO and founder, Dr. Kimberly Reagan, is available for additional information. We appreciate your assistance in transitioning to the public center funding formula and encourage the passage of SB 463. This is crucial to our longevity in the charter school community. And might I add that we are truly members of our community. Our students prepare Thanksgiving dinners for at-risk students and those in need in our neighborhoods. We foster learning of the older students to the younger students, and I am a very proud member of this board. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next caller in support, please.
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last 3 digits, 589. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you. This is Tambry Tondrick, Tambre, last name Tondryk. Chairman Brooks, members of the State Finance Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I am Tambry Tondrick, Executive Director of Operations for Beacon Academy of Nevada, the only alternative education state public charter high school. Under the new state funding formula, Beacon Academy is set to receive less funding, directly impacting the education of Nevada's most at-risk high school students. The students enrolled in Beacon Academy are severely credit deficient and typically graduate during their 5th, 6th, or even 7th year of high school. Other qualifying conditions include those on probation, parole, expelled, suspended, or qualifying as a special education student. I am here today in support of SB 463. The funding provided by this bill is critical to our school as the state transitions to the pupil-centered funding plan. Without the additional funds, we will not be able to sustain the same level of social, emotional, and academic support currently provided to our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Senate Bill 463, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you. Can we go to opposition to Senate Bill 463? And we'll start here in the room. Go ahead whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSEA opposes SB 463 to appropriate $3.8 million for individual charter schools, pointing out 9 public school districts that are losing money in millions of dollars in funding for not being held harmless in the transition to the new funding plan. For years, NSEA has been calling for greater accountability and controls for charter schools. We know the explosive growth of charters has been driven by a deliberate billionaire-backed effort to exempt charters from the basic safeguards and standards that apply to our neighborhood public schools. This growth has created an uneven dynamic, undermining local public schools and communities without producing an overall increase in student learning and growth. We know charter schools serve proportionally fewer at-risk students, English learners, and students with disabilities. And the plan to address this issue at the Charter School Authority will never achieve parity with our school districts. While a handful of charter schools are on the losing side of the new funding plan, the latest publicly available modeling of that plan shows charters coming out millions of dollars ahead. Meanwhile, a majority of Nevada school districts will have their per pupil budgets frozen in place for a number of years, cutting those districts in inflation-adjusted dollars as their costs increase. Applying the current consumer price index of 3.9% to the hold harmless districts in fiscal year 23, that year alone shows an impact of over $12 million to these school districts. This will make it even harder for these districts to attract and retain educators, maintain class sizes, and effectively operate their districts. I would just add, Mr. Chairman, that we are aware that this bailout of these charter schools is a part of the late in session political process in this building. It'd be great if the school districts that also need the help could also get that helping hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Brian Rippett. Thank you, Chair Brooks and committee. I'm a chemistry and physics teacher from Douglas County, currently serving as the president of the Nevada State Education Association. I'd like to highlight a couple of the concerns with the lack of increased cost of doing business for the rural school districts. While I can appreciate the great deal of effort and time that has been taken to ensure that a handful of charter schools are getting to a place where they believe they are held harmless, I have great concern for rural school districts, including my own home district, Elko, Esmeralda, Eureka, and right here in Carson City, with the CPI in the out year, the second year. Without any adjustment for inflation, they will effectively have reduced ability to hold on to their teaching staff and their educators. In Douglas County, it would be about a $2 million reduction in spending power, which is approximately 22 to 25 teachers, which would wipe out an entire set of schools at say, the lake or in a portion of the county. In Elko, it's about $4 million that they would need to be truly held harmless in terms of inflation and cost of doing business. So with the same attention and care that we gave to the charter schools, I hope we can focus that attention on what we were calling the hold harmless school districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rippett. Anyone else here in the room that wants to speak in opposition? All right, we'll go to the phones, and I would like to remind the folks on the phones that are speaking in opposition, speak to the bill and nothing but the bill. That's what this hearing is about. So can we please go to the phones, please?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition on Senate Bill 463, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone in the neutral position here in the room? All right, Mr. Sandy, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for all your hard work as we get ready to wrap up this session. For the record, John Sandy IV with Argentum Partners here today on behalf of Connections Education. We are a virtual education provider in the state, and we are not on the list. I do understand that there are a number of folks that have looked at the numbers and maybe disagree about who may or may not be losing some funding due to moving to the pupil-centered funding formula. However, with the language in Section 1, it says the potential, and I think that language shows an intent to give some leeway to folks that may or may not be on that line, and if the committee would entertain it, we would appreciate if Connections could be included on the list of schools that could potentially lose funding. With that, we definitely support the concepts of the bill as we make this transition, and just again want to thank you for all your attention and time.
Thank you, Mrs. Sandy. Do we have anyone else here in the room in neutral on Senate Bill 463? All right, that is it. I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 463, and we will move to a hearing on Assembly Bill 224. And we have Assemblywoman Duran. Welcome. And you can get started whenever you are ready.
Well, good morning, Chairman Brooks and members of the Finance Committee. For the record, I am B. Duran, representing Assembly District 11 in Clark County. Thank you for your time today and consideration for Assembly Bill 224. This bill provides access to menstrual products in certain restrooms in public middle schools, junior high schools, and charter schools at no cost to the students. Samantha Glover, seen on the big screen right there, a 16-year-old from Reno High School student, brought this bill to our attention to promote menstrual equity and decrease the stigma around period poverty. As well, the teachers were paying out of pocket for these necessary products, period products, for students that didn't have access or who have maybe started their period unexpectedly. 5 other states that provided free period products saw the attendance arose by 2.4%. With that, Chair, I would like to turn this over to Brad Keating of Clark County School District and Lindsay Anderson of Washoe County School District, who are going to discuss the fiscal note. If you have any, and Samantha, if she has anything to say, if she may.
Honorable Chair and members of the committee, my name is Samantha Glover, and I'm a 16-year-old high school student in Reno. I initially brought forward the issue of period poverty to Assemblywoman Duran's attention and would like to ask you to imagine what it would be like for students in Nevada if they were asked to carry around toilet paper, hand soap, and other essential hygiene items just in case. However, this is a reality for every single menstruating student in Nevada. 1 in 4 have missed class time because they haven't had access to menstrual products. Today, I'm representing 717 students, teachers, and educators, along with 19 other organizations that have signed on in support. For the sake of brevity and out of respect for your time, we ask that they did not come to call in to give comment today, but I would like you to understand that over 700 students support this bill across Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Glover. Appreciate that. Who do you have up next, Assemblywoman?
If you have any questions for Samantha or I, or we can turn over to Brad Keating and Lindsay Anderson of the school district.
Before we do that, I just want to see if the committee has any questions on the policy of the bill. Very straightforward. And Senator Don Darrow Loop.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So right now in restrooms, in adult restrooms, or if you go to the airport or what have you, supplies are sitting at the bottom of an old tin dispenser. How will these be dispersed, and how will there be some kind of a device in there for the young ladies to use?
I'm going to let Samantha, she's done some research over several states that have provided these products, and has research, if you don't mind.
Yes, so Samantha Glover for the record. And recently, Denver Public Schools, along with the state of Washington, have implemented the exact same thing inside their school districts. And the dispensers that they use are these acrylic $23 dispensers that are clear, that just have pads and tampons on both sides of the dispenser, that are easy to refill, and they just mount onto a bathroom wall.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. And do we have any other questions on Assembly Bill 234 from the committee? And we will address the fiscal issue, and so maybe now it's appropriate time for you to come to the table so that we can talk about what the fiscal impacts are or might be.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Committee. For the record, Lindsay Anderson on behalf of the Washoe County School District. I'd like to thank Assemblywoman Duran for working with us. We did submit a revised fiscal note based on the second reprint of the bill, which creates basically a pilot project during this biennium where 25% of our schools will be receiving these before full implementation in the next biennium. So our fiscal note includes an estimated cost of approximately $20,000 for the products for the 25% of our schools. That's an ongoing cost to the district, and a $7,200 cost for the dispensers and the installation of those dispensers. As Ms. Glover stated, it sounds like there may be some less expensive options, but we have to, we are subject to the procurement laws as outlined in NRS 332, and so we're just estimating at this point based on what's available information that we have. So that is our revised fiscal note at this moment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And that's the unsolicited fiscal note from Washoe County, if I'm looking at the ones that were submitted online.
That's correct. The unsolicited fiscal note is a reflection of the first reprint of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Keating?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad Keating, for the record, representing Clark County School District. Along with that, as looking at the unsolicited fiscal note, based on the amendment of the bill, the Clark County School District has a fiscal note here of, if passed, there's a total of 32 schools that would be affected by this legislation moving forward as the pilot program. The first year's fiscal impact would be about $157,000, about $4,900 per school to cover the cost of supplies and installation of dispensers at the 25% of the CCSD secondary schools, and then an ongoing cost of approximately $132,000 for additional supplies each year. And we've broken down how we've come up and calculated that cost. But as Ms. Anderson said, we would look to, we will bring in the best provider possible at the lowest rate, so the fiscal impact may be less than what we're showing today.
Thank you. And fiscal staff, do you have all that information? I think it's just the unsolicited fiscal notes that were resubmitted. Okay, perfect. Do we have any other questions from the committee on this bill? All right. Thank you. Can we go to the for support here in the room for Assembly Bill 224? Ms. Adler, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Sarah Adler for the Charter School Association of Nevada. I just want to communicate that the schools we have talked with about this bill are in enthusiastic support. We've also been in touch with the SPCSA, and they are all good with this as well. Thank you.
Good morning. Check. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Maria Teresa Lieberman Barraga, and I am here with Battleborn Progress and a group of coalition partners that support this bill. And for the sake of brevity, I won't say all their names, but they are here. I am here in support of Assembly Bill 224, and we thank Assemblywoman Duran for this bill. As someone who has first-hand experience with this issue, I strongly support all students having access to menstrual products in our schools, because I know what it was like to not have that access. It is desperately needed and worth the investment to keep our young folks in class and meeting their health needs, because at the end of the day, this is basic health care. If you can invest in these products for free in this building, our young folks in the state deserve the same in their schools. I commend Ms. Glover and Assemblywoman Duran for their work on this critical issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Do we have anyone else here in the room in support? And your fan club was waving when you were referencing them, so we will note their support as well. All right. Do we have anyone else? Okay, can we go to the phones and see if we have anyone in support to Assembly Bill 224? And please address the bill and what's in the bill and your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 224, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 918. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you. My name is Leanne McAllister, Leann, MC, capital ALLISTER. I am the Executive Director of the Nevada Chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Today, I am very pleased to offer support on behalf of the Nevada AAP for AB 224. I've submitted my complete testimony by email. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. And do we have anyone else in support on the phones?
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last 3 digits, 459. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, members of the Senate Finance Committee. For the record, my name is Jerry Burton. It's Jeri and then Burton. I'm the president of the Nevada chapter of the National Organization for Women, and our members enthusiastically support AB 224 for period equity. We're very grateful to the Assemblywoman B. Duran and the wonderful Samantha Glover for this bill. Period products are a necessity and must be readily available and free of charge in our schools. And as mentioned this past year, 1 in 4 people with periods struggle to purchase feminine hygiene products. And no one should have to miss class time or other essential school activities because they cannot afford period products. So we really urge you to support and vote yes on AB 224. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in support of AB 224 on the phone?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 224, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do we have anyone in opposition to Assembly Bill 224 here in the room? We don't see any, so anyone in opposition to Assembly Bill 224 on the phone?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 224, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 224 on the phones?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 224, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Ms. Glover, for helping with this bill and for presenting this morning. And Assemblywoman Duran, do you have any final statement you want to make before we close the hearing?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With that, I would like to, if with your indulgence, let Samantha, she's been so excited about this bill, and would like to do a closing if that's okay with you.
That is awesome. Go ahead, please, Ms. Glover.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Finance Committee, I'd like to conclude my presentation with a quote. When New Hampshire's Governor Chris Sununu signed a similar bill into law in 2019, he said New Hampshire's bill would help ensure young women can learn without disruption and free of shame or fear of stigma. It is my hope we can give our Nevada students that same opportunity. Thank you again for taking your time to consider this measure, and I urge your support of AB 224.
Thank you. And Senator Dondero Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Samantha, thank you so much for joining us on Sunday morning. I was a teacher for a lot of years, and I have 3 daughters, so this is a very important subject, so thank you.
Senator Severs-Gansert.
Thank you, Chair Brooks. So Samantha, I understand that you go to Reno High School, so I want to thank you as well for bringing this to the legislature. It's a great idea and a wonderful way to support young women, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Glover, and thank you, Assemblywoman.
Thank you for your consideration.
And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 224. And we will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 241, which establishes provisions governing credits on terms of imprisonment during certain declarations of emergency.
Thank you, Chair Brooks and members of the committee. For the record, I am Assemblywoman Gonzalez, representing beautiful Assembly District 16 in Clark County. First, I'll just provide some small background on the bill, discuss the fiscal, and I will hand it over to Holly Wellborn from the ACLU. As of March 13th, statistics show that Nevada's Department of Corrections reported 5,460 cases and 56 deaths due to COVID. However, due to vaccines being available, we have seen that we as a country are starting to address this issue. In the last year, though, we have lost people in NDOC due to COVID. And so what Assembly Bill 241 does is that it gives back good time credits to offenders who would have received or earned good behavior, educational attainment, or the successful completion of a treatment program, therefore by reducing their sentence and the inmate in population. Speaking with stakeholders in the Assembly, we were able to get the fiscal notes off. However, due to some updated stakeholder conversations, the original fiscal note that was submitted by the parole board will now be added back onto the bill because we have edited the bill and added back in the retroactiveness so that the department may execute this bill. And so Victoria Gonzalez, the executive director of the Department of Sentencing Policy, is on the line to discuss her analysis of cost savings to the state. It is my understanding that the Department of Corrections and the parole board are also on the line to answer any questions that the committee may have in regards to the fiscal note as well. And at this time, I will now turn it over to Holly Wellborn. Thank you.
And before you get going, Ms. Wellborn, Assemblywoman, we have a document in our exhibits that is prepared for Assemblywoman Gonzalez, dated May 30th, 2021. Is this the mock-up amendment that you referenced, proposed amendment 3471?
Yes, that is correct. So in that amendment, you will see that we had added the retroactiveness back into the bill. There is a reporting mechanism within 60 days that the Department of Corrections has to report a list of inmates that would receive that information to a few different agencies, including the legislature and the governor's office. And then you will also see a provision in there discussing that that this is not a right for inmates. So we don't want to set the expectation that this is like a right that they would receive, right? And so that was also added in just to set the expectation that folks will be eligible for this and to address this last year, but that it's not something that is going to be given to anyone. So you will see that in section 1 of the bill as well of who it applies to. And Assemblywoman Gonzalez, for the record, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Wellborn.
Thank you, Chair Brooks. Holly Wellborn, Policy Director for the ACLU of Nevada, for the record. I want to just go through a couple of lines on the bill to help understand this issue and the statutes that we're looking at and how this credit will accrue and where all of this comes from, just for the committee's clarification. If we look at page 2, section 1 of the bill, sub 1, line 8, that lists out 4 different statutes, and those statutes are had been amended in 2007 by a bill that was Assembly Bill 510. So AB 510 credits is what they're known as. This bill does not touch on that complex sort of accrual of time for the amount of time that someone is incarcerated, but it does touch on one provision that's present in each of those statutes where the director may allow up to 10 days of credit to an offender whose diligence in labor and study merit such credit. That's what's at issue with this bill and what we are trying to ensure individuals who were enrolled in some type of program, whether that be a labor program, a study program, during the COVID-19 pandemic due to restrictions, due to those restrictions, individuals were not able to participate in that programming. They weren't able to attend labor programming, they weren't able to attend vocational programming, and they lost that accrual. And families were counting on those accruals in order for their loved one to come home. On average, an individual gets about 5 days of credit, but some individuals can accrue up to 10 days of credit per these statutes. So what we're asking for is quite modest, is to, just give back people at least half of that time that they may have accrued. So that's 5 days, not to exceed 60 days per year. That is what this is seeking to achieve. There was desire from stakeholders. This has gone through a number of amendments, but we're coming back to really the original version of the bill that applies this retroactively. So those individuals who lost that time during this period, they get that time back. And it's a minimal amount of time, but it actually has a lot of meaning for families who are prepared to testify to that today. It was also important for the bill to clarify that just because you're receiving these credits, they're not obligated to give you a parole hearing immediately or automatically. It's that you accrue that time, and as the parole board is ready and set to, have your parole hearing, it won't overwhelm the parole board. So with that, I'm happy to answer any technical questions on the policy of the bill, and we can turn it back to Assemblywoman Gonzalez or to the folks who can talk about their fiscal impact.
I have a question on the policy before we get to the fiscal impact. So, the credit that you're referencing is for the credits that would have been achieved otherwise if they were participating in the program and or work program or whatever else is eligible under that statute.
Assemblywoman Gonzalez, District 16, for the record. Yes, that is correct. So I think I was a little rushed in my statements. Yes, so the issue that happened during the COVID-19 pandemic is that the state went into a state of emergency due to this infectious disease. And so they weren't able to program, right? They had a limited number of supplies in the NDOC. And so they lost this time due to not being able to program, due to not having enough space in rooms, right, for a few months. A lot of us didn't really understand COVID, right, and so a lot of things were stopped, including our state, and so this is really seeking to address the credits that were lost that they would have accrued otherwise. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Forgive my ignorance of the subject. I have not ever been on judiciary and hope I never will be. But so is there, to get these credits, you just simply have to be enrolled as a participant, or is there, like, for lack of a better term, a passing grade, or you have to participate in a program in a satisfactory way to be able to get the credits, or just simply being enrolled qualify you for the credits we're talking about?
Holly Wellborn, Policy Director for the ACLU of Nevada. So typically, if you're in a workforce program or something like that, it can be merit-based, but by and large, if you're enrolled in those programs and you're actively participating, you accrue the credit. If there's some sort of disciplinary issue, they can take the credit off. So, I mean, if somebody is going to accrue the credits under this bill, there is, the Department of Corrections can assess whether or not they're going to apply that time. Again, the bill does state that they're not guaranteeing a right to a parole hearing just based on the fact that they've accrued that time. So I think we have some protections in there to address the concern about whether or not they're meeting the merits of their programming.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions on Assembly Bill 241 for either Assemblywoman Gonzalez or for Ms. Wellborn from the committee? I was hoping that some of these Judiciary Committee members would help me out, but they're not here today. I'm with you. All right. Okay, so we will address the fiscal impact. So we have a DPS, Parole Board, and a Department of Corrections as introduced. Oh no, that's unsolicited. I'm sorry. And these unsolicited fiscal notes are dated 4/20, so they don't necessarily reflect this amendment, but the amendment you said kind of brings it back to where it was at that time, right?
Assemblywoman Gonzalez, District 16, for the record. Thank you, Chair Brooks, for the question. Yes, so the Department of Corrections will be testifying that their fiscal has fallen off, and there is a written note from them that should be uploaded on Nellis. However, with putting the retroactivity back into the bill, it will generate a fiscal, which is why we put that provision in there, and that Ms. Wellborn mentioned that when the parole board is ready to do so, they can begin to hear those folks who will have accrued credit, gotten time off of their sentence, and be ready to have a parole hearing. But we also want to acknowledge that we don't want to overwhelm the parole board. So we are currently uncertain what the number is, but we will be going off of the original that was submitted. And they're on the line too that can testify to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So DPS will still have the same regardless. They'll still have that same responsibility. Okay. And Mr. Thorley or Mr. Hartz, do you have the letter that Assemblywoman Gonzalez is referencing? I guess we could always get them if we've got Department of Corrections on Zoom.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
We do have a letter dated May 24th from the chair of the parole board, as well as a letter dated May 14th from the Department of Corrections.
And do they reference the amended version, or do they reference the original version? Because I'm seeing a second reprint from an amendment adopted May 27th.
So the letter from the Department of Corrections indicates that they have withdrawn their fiscal note, and that was the unsolicited fiscal note dated May 20th. The letter from the parole board indicates that they had submitted a fiscal note on March 21st, which is consistent with the unsolicited, and it indicates that they are withdrawing that one as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hartz. And it looks like we have Mr. Derrico on the phone. On the Zoom.
Yes, thank you, Chair Brooks. Chris Tirico, Chairman, Board of Parole Commissioners, and I think I can help to explain this. So our original fiscal note was submitted, like was mentioned just a moment ago, on March 20th, March 21st, and that had to do with the original version of the bill where it spoke about the retroactivity. After working with the stakeholders and everyone along the process, it came to a point, I would say in the last week, where the retroactivity was going to be removed from this bill. That was the understanding. And as such, that is when we were able to remove our unsolicited fiscal statement, or the note that we put in there. However, here just recently, now the retroactivity language is now again back in the latest version of this amendment. So our unsolicited fiscal statement we will need to be reinstituted here.
And that was for just this fiscal year, and that was for $14,000?
That is correct.
Thank you.
It's a one-time, and that will, I'm sorry, Chris Tirico, for the record. It is just for this fiscal year, and that will help us to get through these hearings that will need to, where they will become, in essence, eligible as soon as the credits are awarded, and it will create somewhat of a surge for approximately 2 months, and that nearly $14,000 will assist us so that we can get through those.
Thank you, Mr. Dorico. Do we have any questions for Mr. Dorico from the committee or fiscal staff? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Dorico. And do we have anyone from the Department of Corrections on the Zoom? Oh, there we go. How are you doing this morning? Afternoon at this point. And if you could address the same issue, that would be great.
My name is Georgia Powers, Jorja. I'm the Chief of Offender Management for the Department of Corrections. Our fiscal note was written before language was taken out of the first version regarding awarding credits to the minimum term of the sentences. As long as that remains amended, then we are fine and we have no fiscal note. I would like to address the credits, though, that Ms. Wellborn was speaking of. My interpretation, our interpretation, and as well as the stakeholders, is that we will be giving credits to everyone who has earned them. Some people did not work during the pandemic, but our prisons were still running, so that the offenders did have jobs, and some of them did program. The credits, as we see them, are exceptional merit credits for the changes and modifications to the normal operations of the prison. So that is our understanding of how the credits will be applied.
Thank you. And is that understanding based upon the conceptual amendment that is posted today? Have you seen that?
We have seen the conceptual language, and that does not change our original interpretation at all.
Thank you. And I have a question about that. And your fiscal year 21, 22, 22, 23, that makes sense. Effect on future biennia. I don't necessarily understand why that would be consistent with with what it would be in fiscal year 23. Can you help me understand that?
Are you talking about the original fiscal note? I'm sorry.
I am, but according to testimony from the bill sponsor, the amendment posted today takes it back to basically the original language, including this provision of the bill. And so I'm basing that, my understanding, on your original fiscal note.
I do not have a copy of that original fiscal note in front of me. It was based on having, if the original language meant that we would give everybody time off their minimum term, that would be against how some offenders already get it. And so we would have had to take apart each sentence, each offender's sentences, if they were aggregated, and unaggregate them, put the time in, re-aggregate. And so it was going to be we looked at the time period it would take to do that to each of them, and it was going to take approximately 4 years. So that may be what was written in. At this point, we have no fiscal note.
Okay, I understand that. So the 4 years, it's not ongoing every biennium. It's this one and the next. Okay. Do we have any? And so, I think that we just need to get really clear here that do we or do we not have the unsolicited fiscal note based upon this new reprint? Because it sounds as if this amendment, the amendment that removed their fiscal note, that particular language is still in this bill.
Thank you so much, Senator Brooks, Assemblywoman Gonzalez, District 16, for the record. I think what we're confused about is that there was an original fiscal note submitted from the Department of Corrections because there was language that would have included that everyone received this credit. And so we amended that so that it would be the folks that were already receiving programming, so that it wouldn't be a pool of everyone in the department, because as Ms. Powers said, it would have taken them 4 years to manually have to go in and award those credits. So that was fixed in the first amendment. And then the amendment that is before you today is due to speaking with various stakeholders. We needed to put the retroactiveness back in the language for it to be in statute, which would generate the parole board's fiscal that is now back. And if anyone would like to clarify, but that is my understanding. Thank you.
Okay, I think I got it. That's the problem with day 119, day of hearing amendments. Just saying. So, and you are not by the first, and probably not the last I'm going to see today. So, all right, thank you. I think I understand that. Do we have any questions from anybody in the committee? All right, seeing none, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Powers, and thank you, Mr. DeRico, and thank you, Ms. Wellborn and Assemblywoman Gonzalez. And so we can now go to anyone here in support of Assembly Bill 241. And again, let's keep our testimony concise, but speak to the bill.
Good afternoon, Kendra Birchie with the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. I want to thank Chair Brooks as well as the committee for hearing this extremely important bill. I'll just add that you'll probably be hearing on the phone lines from the impacted individuals and their family members as to the importance of this. As we all knew, due to COVID, those who are in custody weren't able to program, weren't able to earn those credits. So this does impact them in terms of giving them that opportunity that they would have received. We believe that this is a very important bill and urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair. John Pirro for the record from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. I'd like to just echo what Ms. Birchie said. COVID slowed down the opportunity for people to attend programming and earn good time credits, and this would restore that. We think it's a fairness measure. I'd also like to put support on the record for Plan and Faith in Action, as they are in a different hearing this morning.
Thank you for doing that for your colleagues as you guys all move around the building trying to cover bases. Do we have anyone in support of Assembly Bill 241 on the phones? And please, callers, please note the 2-minute limit that we're putting on testimony today, and also please speak to the provisions of the bill and only the provisions of the bill, if you could, and go ahead and support of 241.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 241, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 130, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, my name is Jody Hocking, JODIHLCKING, the founder of Return Strong, Families United for Justice for the Incarcerated, and I am going to try to keep this as brief as possible. First, just in explaining why this bill is necessary, well, there were people who were in programming, who programming stopped. There were also people who were new to the prison, who were attempting to get into programming and jobs, and because those things stopped, they were never eligible, and they've been forced to just sit there this entire time. Normally, they receive 5 days of credit for programming. That comes up to like at least 98 days right now, depending on when we cut it off, 98 to 105. As COVID ran on, we started to see people who really were past expiration. They were their programming days, so they were due for parole boards that they were not getting. They were expiring, and they were not going home, and they were staying in prison past their sentencing date, which is how this, bill started, was in conversation about that. I'd like to just take a minute and give you one example of a person who personifies why this bill matters. The story of a young man named Joshua Hayes. He passed away at NNCC last Friday on May 21st. He was 30 years old and serving a 2 to 4 year sentence for a nonviolent felony. His felony was tied to his issues with substance abuse and addiction. While he was incarcerated, he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and died shortly after his diagnosis, 5 days before he would have been eligible for a parole board. If his programming days had been applied consistently throughout the pandemic, he would have actually been eligible for parole in February prior to being diagnosed with cancer, and very likely would have at least made it to the streets and seen his family again, had available medical treatment. Instead, without those days applied, Josh died in hospice at NNCC. This bill is necessary for protection of incarcerated people. Unfortunately, when those credits were not applied consistently the way that they were supposed to be, it was completely out of control of incarcerated people, and it's deeply impacting both people who are passing expiration, passing their mandatory parole boards, and it's impacting
sorry to
families.
interrupt. Thank you so much for your testimony, but we have to keep with our time limits so that we can make sure that we hear from as many people as possible on this bill. So with that, next caller in support of Assembly Bill 241, please.
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last 3 digits, 759. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Greetings, Chair Brooks and the committee. My name is Jagada Chambers, JAGADACHAMBERS, calling in complete support of AB 241. I'm the Rights Restoration Coordinator with Silver State Voices. I actually sent legislation into the Department of Corrections. This legislation galvanized with folks inside, helping them get language. I do want to add that during the pandemic, what a regular day looked like is folks being in their cell for 23 hours and 40 minutes. So through the pandemic, the institutions turned into basically solitary confinement. So this 5 credits to me is a dose of humanity for folks that were your constituents that were in custody. And again, I don't want to be too long, so I'll just end there and also concur with Ms. Hawkins' testimony before me. Thank you, Chair, and have a great day.
Thank you very much. Could we please have the next caller in support of Assembly Bill 241?
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last 3 digits, 815. Please press star 6 to unmute. Caller with the last three digits, 815. Please press star 6 on your telephone to unmute. Thank you, caller. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Morgan Darcy. That's Morgandarcy. And I am in support of this bill. I would also like to piggyback off of Jody Hawkins' testimony regarding the individual who passed away while serving time. He generally he could have been released a little bit earlier, but with the credits being taken away and unable to serve, this individual had to suffer and die at the hands of his disease while incarcerated. There are many of us that have loved ones that are suffering because of this. They have done their time. However, it is not their fault for the COVID happening and them losing their good time. I am in complete support of this bill and would like to see it go into effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in support of Assembly Bill 241 on the phone?
Thank you. Yes, Chair. Caller with the last three digits, 151. Please press star 6 to unmute. Thank you, caller. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. This is Denise Bolaños, DENISE with Return Strong. And I think it's important to support AB 241 because this is time that incarcerated people will not get back otherwise. And a worldwide pandemic is not something that was in their or anyone else's control. And just like so many protections have been put in place outside of prison to help us overcome this pandemic, incarcerated people should get that same thing. AB 241 is the right thing to do. And the reality is it's only giving them something that they would have had if that pandemic had not happened in the first place. So thank you. And I urge you to support this bill.
Thank you. And do we have any other callers in support of AB 241?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last three digits, 005. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, my name is Nicole Williams, WILLIAMS, and I am on to give my full support of AB 241, and I'm asking that you please vote yes and send it to the Senate floor. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have anyone else in support of Assembly Bill 241?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do. Caller with the last three digits, 003. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
My name is Desiree Miller, DESIREEMILLER. I'm in full support, and I agree with everything everyone has said. This is definitely needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in support of Assembly Bill 241?
Yes, sure, we do. Caller with the last three digits, 826. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, caller, please proceed with your testimony.
Okay, hi, my name is Ayana Oglesby, last name Oglesby, and I vote in Reno. I'm here today to ask you to pass AB 241. Applying programming credits is something that normally happens to incarcerated people for work participation in education programs, work programs, and being productive during their incarceration. When COVID hit, those credits stopped because programming stopped. In the end, that has extended people incarceration past their expiration dates. During COVID, hundreds of people were incarcerated past their expiration, which not only opens up the state to lawsuits, it impacts lives and families and leaves incarcerated people and families bearing the burden of this individually. We have to make sure that doesn't happen in the future. Thank you. And again, we are Nevada strong and we're battle born. We have a moral and ethical obligation to be concerned and care for all Nevadans, whether they're bound or free. And with that, I close. Thank you for your time. And again, please pass this bill. It's critical.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in support of Assembly Bill 241?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do. Caller with the last three digits, 746. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, my name is Sharice Lothamer, CharriseLothamer, and I just am here to say that I am in full support of AB 241 and the importance that this bill is for those that are incarcerated. And thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in support of Assembly Bill 241?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 241, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more there are no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you, and I appreciate the supporters keeping their testimony brief so that we could hear from all the supporters that were on the phone today. Now I'll move to opposition. Opposition to Assembly Bill 241. I don't see any in the room. Can we go to the phones and see if we have anybody in opposition to Assembly Bill 241?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 241, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone in neutral to Assembly Bill 241?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 241, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits, 342, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. This is Victoria Gonzalez, VICTORIAGONZALEZ. I am the Executive Director from the Department of Sentencing Policy. We have worked with the sponsor, Ms. Wellborn, and the stakeholders regarding the projections related to the potential savings that may result from this legislation. And from what we have put together, we have identified a potential savings for those that will be released and a savings to the corrections, which would offset any fiscal impact that may result from this legislation. Again, these are projections, and contained within the legislation is the requirement that our department receive information about those who receive credit so that we can continue to work with the stakeholders and determine the actual savings that may be realized and any additional costs that the states may identify resulting from this legislation. I would be happy at this time or at any time to answer questions related to our projections and assist the legislature and the stakeholders in identifying savings and costs that may result from legislation like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee on that potential issue? I do not see any, so thank you very much. And we'll go to the next caller in neutral position, please.
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. However, there are no additional callers wishing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. And I think we might have some folks on Zoom who are interested in providing neutral testimony.
Hi, good morning. This is Chris DeRico, Chairman, Board of Parole Commissioners. I represent the Parole Board, and we are neutral on this. Just for clarification, I just wanted to make sure that as a result of the proposed amendment 3471, that does bring back our fiscal note of nearly $14,000, and I just wanted to make sure that that was clear on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeRico. That I think it's clear. We got that. And do we have anyone else? And Mr. Lawson, are you in the neutral position and provide testimony?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for having me today. And Tom Lawson, for the record, I'm the Chief of Parole and Probation of the Department of Public Safety. The division has not submitted a fiscal note on this. This will impact and cause a surge increase in pre-release planning for our pre-release specialists. However, due to the limited nature of the credit application, a maximum of 60 days, we'll be able to adapt and overcome that surge of release planning over several months with existing staff. And if the level were high enough to justify staff, we couldn't have a staff member hired and trained in the next few months to accomplish that anyway. But our plan is to address the surge using existing staffing. The JFA numbers for the next biennium called for the addition of one warrants and extradition unit specialist and the reduction of one pre-release specialist. So with this surge, we'll just delay the implementation of that shift over of assignment and leave somebody in place at pre-release to establish this. And if that doesn't provide sufficient capacity, we'll have to address the other through overtime allocation. And mainly our note here is just that this will cause a surge in the past parole eligibility date list, meaning people that are remaining incarcerated past their parole eligibility date. There just isn't a way around that with the retroactive credit. So just want everybody to be aware that that number is going to spike. We do get questions from that from staff. It seems every year, and there is public interest in people remaining in custody beyond that. We'll process those as fast as we can within our existing staff and the ability of the board to handle hearings, which ties back to their fiscal note. But just so everybody's aware, there will be a spike in that number, and we will work as diligently as possible to alleviate it. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Do we have any questions from the committee for Mr. Lawson on that issue? I see none. So do we have anyone else in neutral position on Zoom? All right, I think that's it. Any final comments, Assemblywoman?
Assemblywoman Gonzalez, District 16 for the record. No, I just want to thank the committee for their time today in considering this important piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 241, and we will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 393. Maybe. I don't see anyone running up to the table to present 393. So we will not open the hearing on 393. We will open the hearing on, I don't see him either. So we will skip to the hearing. Do I? The hearing on Assembly Bill 416. Were you going to be presenting that today, Mr. Hardy, or do you have somebody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Warren Hardy, representing the Council for a Better Nevada. I think it may just be me. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod, I know is busy. Maureen Schaefer was not able to get on the line. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for, if you would like me to proceed.
Please do.
Thank you. Thank you for scheduling this, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman. Warren Hardy, again, representing the Council for a Better Nevada. One of the things that we became very aware during the Question 1 campaign last cycle was that the one part of that, as you may recall, Mr. Chairman, that narrowly lost, but the portion of that was extremely popular with the public based on our polling, based on our conversations, was the section that required NSHE to be audited annually. That led us to an examination of the last time the legislature had actually audited the Nevada system of higher education. And I was able to determine that there wasn't a full audit since I've been involved in the process, which this year marks 30 years. So, Mr. Chairman, this is just simply a piece of legislation that is designed to require the legislative auditor to conduct an audit of the system of higher education. I spent a lot of time with your legislative auditor narrowing the scope of this. He told me the original draft of the bill would have been the largest audit that they have ever done at the legislative audit division. That's not exactly what we were after. We wanted to take a global look at the from a legislative perspective and then have him be able to follow any trails. We think that's what this legislation in front of you does. I'm not an expert on the fiscal note, although Mr. Crossman, I've been on contact with him this morning. I believe the fiscal note is 80,000 in the first buy-in and 120,000 in the next. So we wholeheartedly support this as a legislature demanding some accountability for the money they spend on higher ed. Thank you. Be happy to.
Go big or go home. Biggest audit in the history of audits.
I wanted to go for it, Mr. Chair, but apparently, $1 million for an audit was a little steep.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty straightforward. My only question is, how on earth did this make it out of Ways and Means? Just kidding. Do we have any questions for Mr. Hardy on Assembly Bill 416? All right. I see none. Thank you so much. And we'll go to support of Assembly Bill 416 here in the room, and don't see any, so we'll go to the phones. And again, please, the mantra for today, please keep it brief and keep it directly aimed at the bill that we're considering. So do we have any support to Assembly Bill 416 on the phones right now?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 416, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
All right. Do we have anyone in opposition of Assembly Bill 416? There's none in the room, so can we see if we have any opposition to Assembly Bill 416 on the phones?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 416, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
All right. Do we have anyone in neutral on Assembly Bill 416? And anyone on the phone? Mr. Crossman, are you in neutral, or are you here to answer any questions we might have on the audit?
Mr. Chair, I'm here to testify in the neutral as appropriate at this time.
All right. Well, we'll go right ahead then if you go ahead whenever you're ready.
For the record, Dan Crossman, Legislative Auditor, testifying today in the neutral on AB 416. Our office is willing to conduct any audits that are requested of us by the legislature. The legislative requests require us to look at our resources and look at the audits we currently have in place and scheduled based on the Legislative Commission's approval of our list. We do really appreciate the opportunity to work with the sponsor on this bill to narrow the scope to make it a little more manageable for our office. And in closing, I'd just like to thank Chair Brooks and members of the legislature for their continued support of the Audit Division. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Crossman? Seeing none. I don't know if we verified if we had anybody on the phones in neutral.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 416, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
All right. With that, any final remarks, Mr. Hardy? All right, none. We will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 416, and Mr. Watts just came on down, so we're going to open the hearing on Assembly Bill 432.
Thank you very much, Chair Brooks, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Assemblyman Howard Watts, representing District 15 in Clark County. I'm glad to present Assembly Bill 432 for your consideration today. First, I'd just like to ask for the chair's direction. I can provide about a 4-minute overview of the bill, or I can provide a 1-minute overview of the bill.
The Senator Kiekefer is looking for the longer, extended version. No, since this is hasn't been heard in the policy committee over here yet, I would like you just to tell us what it does, and the 4-minute version would be great.
Glad to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the overall objective of Assembly Bill 432 is to expand upon our proven and successful automatic voter registration system, also known as AVR for short. what we're looking to do really is implement this system in other agencies and also streamline some of the ways that it works. And by expanding its implementation, we can help eligible voters register to vote or maintain up-to-date name and address information. And in creating some efficiencies, we can create a smoother and more secure process that works for everybody, our election administrators, our service providers, and voters themselves. The impacts of the pandemic over the last year have clearly demonstrated the importance of modern and flexible election systems, and AB 432 takes steps to bring Nevada to the cutting edge of these systems nationwide. One of the key components of the bill is moving to a back-end automatic voter registration system, which would automatically register people to vote when they verify their citizenship and eligibility at the DMV or another agency. People who've already had their who have already registered to vote will have their information updated to reflect any address or other changes that might have occurred since they last supplied and updated that information with a state agency. New or updated registrants will then be mailed a postcard offering them the opportunity to decline their new registration or registration change. This helps ensure that we keep things running smoothly, both at the DMV and other agencies, which we know have a high volume of service being provided and are trying to get people in and out in a timely manner. It's the most effective policy for us to add eligible voters to the rolls and get accurate information for our voters. And also the process laid out in the bill ensures that people who are not eligible are protected from any inadvertent interactions with our AVR system. The other primary component of the bill is that it expands the automatic voter registration system both to the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange and to essentially the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services when processing applications for Medicaid. And people served through Medicaid are less likely to engage with the DMV. They're kind of a differently situated population, more likely to rely on public transportation or the assistance of family or friends to get to and from places. And these agencies in particular, through the work that they do of getting people signed up for health care coverage, collect information that helps identify voters and verify their eligibility, including citizenship and age information. It's also worth noting that similar to the DMV, these agencies are also essentially motor voter agencies that must offer the opportunity to register to vote currently. And so implementing AVR, again, allows them to streamline that practice so that they can focus on delivering service to Nevada families and have the voter registration piece be taken care of quickly and efficiently in the background. Extending this to Medicaid would ensure that more Nevadans can take advantage of this streamlined, convenient option to keep their registration updated as they move or register for the first time. It benefits not only people without driver's licenses and low-income families, but also elderly, people with disabilities, and more. And civic participation is linked to improved health outcomes, and so I think it truly benefits the recipients of some of those services. Additionally, the bill allows for other state agencies as well as tribal governments to opt in to become voter registration agencies when in consultation with the governor's office, when they determine that they have the information and would be able to set up the systems to plug in. Again, the goal is to have, when people are having interactions with their government, that we can use that to keep our voter rolls up to date, and would just like to reiterate that they can opt out at any time. As someone who's personally spent many, many hours registering people to vote in our high schools and our colleges, out in the community, and in front of state agencies, including the DMV, I know firsthand how these improvements just reduce the opportunity for human error as we look at paper forms and utilize technology to improve the experience for voters and the processing involved for our election officials and state agencies. So with that, I'll pause there to see if anyone has questions about the policy, and then I'm glad to speak to the fiscal aspects of the bill briefly as well.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Assemblyman Watts on AB 432? So I do. I'm looking at it, and it seems like there's some appropriations made in the bill. And then this is also the second reprint. So I'm just trying to track where we're at, because this is expensive. So I'm trying to track how expensive it is. And so it doesn't appear that the appropriations made in the bill would actually address the Silver State Health Exchange or the Welfare and Supportive Services fiscal notes. And so are there first reprint fiscal notes? Was the second reprint, did it make amendments that would have added or taken away those fiscal notes?
Thank you for those questions. Happy to speak to that. Assemblyman Howard Watts for the record. I'll speak to both of the amendments and the impacts that they had. So in conversations with some of the agencies and others, the original timeline on the bill had implementation by January of 2022. Given some of the other things that we are contemplating for addressing in our election system, it was determined that that would be a challenge, a heavy lift. In addition, there's another measure that we are considering to change the voter registration system from a so-called bottom-up system to a top-down system. And that transformation would have benefits in the expansion of automatic voter registration. The effective date of that legislation is in January of 2024. So the first reprint of the bill moved out the implementation date from 2022 to 2024 to help align and alleviate some of those issues. As a result of that, the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services sent in an unsolicited fiscal note indicating that with that lengthened timeline for implementation, their fiscal note was 0. The Silver State Health Exchange indicated that they would likely have some cost in future biennia, but none in this biennium. And so that really just left the Secretary of State's office and some minor programming costs for the DMV related to the modification of their current AVR system. And so the second reprint of the bill includes the appropriations to cover those costs. And again, the Secretary of State's office did not modify their fiscal note based on the extended timeline. We know they're going to incur those costs at some point. And so the second reprint is simply the appropriations to cover those outstanding notes. So it's my understanding that in the second reprint, all of the fiscal items have been addressed either through the removal of fiscal notes, the removal of fiscal impact for the biennium, or an appropriation.
Thank you. And so when we speak of the Welfare and Supportive Services fiscal note, and how that's aligned now with the potentially aligned with the top-down legislation that's being contemplated. Now, does that remove their ability? Does that remove the costs associated with it, or does it just push them out to the next biennium in alignment with the top-down?
Thank you for that question, Chair Brooks. Howard Watts for the record. I can say with certainty that it does not incur a fiscal cost within this biennium. You'll see, so they submitted a 0 fiscal note. Silver State Health Exchange indicated the costs would be in a future biennium, and I believe there probably would be some cost associated with it in the future, but they don't believe, certainly there would be any in this biennium. And instead of putting words in their mouth, if they happen to be available, I'd like them to speak to that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But we have the context by which to ask the question now, so I appreciate that. Before I do that, any other questions for Assemblyman Watts on Assembly Bill 432? All right. We're joined by Mr. Fisher this morning, and maybe he could address that fiscal note issue associated with the version of the bill we have here in front of us.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Steve Fisher. I serve as the administrator for the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. And yes, based on reprint number 1, which extends the implementation date from January of 22 to January of 2024, which is beyond the next biennium, we definitely will not have any costs associated with this particular bill in the next biennium. However, this also does provide us with an opportunity to continue to meet with work groups during the interim period to discuss this particular bill and how it will be implemented. And it will also allow the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services to reevaluate whether there will be any costs in a future biennium. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I'll open up for any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Fisher on that fiscal note from the division? All right, I'm not seeing any. So thank you, Mr. Fisher. Appreciate it. Thank you, Assemblyman. And we'll move to support for Assembly Bill 432. And in the room. And then we have a few in the room, then we'll go to the phones. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Brooks and committee members. For the record, my name is Emily Prasad Zamora. I'm the Executive Director of Silver State Voices here in strong support of Assembly Bill 432. Funding more methods in which eligible voters may register to vote is imperative in order to ensure that we are welcoming greater participation to our electoral processes amongst all Nevadans. We ask that you invest in our democracy by voting yes on AB 432. And just wanted to point out that our two particular favorite things about this bill is the expansion of Medicaid and the expansion of Native American agencies, hopefully increasing the voter registration rates amongst the Native American population. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Maria Teresa Lieberman Parraga, and I am here with Battleborn Progress, and we rise in strong support of AB 432. When a majority of Nevada voters supported the measure to enact an automatic voter registration system previously, Nevadans demonstrated that they value making our democracy as accessible as possible to every eligible voter. This bill expands that system to include Medicaid, Silver State Health Insurance Exchange, and other state agencies, and we find this to be something very worth the investment. The enhancements under AB 432 increase the opportunity to eligible Nevadans to be enfranchised and registered to vote, saving election officials and voters time, effort, and money, while also improving voter security. We thank Assemblyman Watts for bringing this bill forward and urge its passage by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Eric Jang, ERICJNG, representing Asian Community Development Council, here in support of Assembly Bill 432. Ditto to the previous testimonies, the bill ensures accurate records for existing registrants, meaning more opportunities to update mailing addresses and party affiliation. And then for our community, where 1 in 5 Nevadans are foreign-born to protect, and half of that are not yet citizens, this bill also have measures to protect them with back-end AVR system filtering out DMV customers who provide documents such as green card or driver authorization card. The proposed measures also add security for and protect ineligible residents, and that's something that we really like. 3 years ago, we, the people, passed AVR through ballot measure. Nevadans overwhelmingly support ease of access and convenience for voter registration. This bill ensures people's will is respected and expanding on the current implementation. So we thank you for the hearing and urge for your support for AB 432.
Chairman Brooks, I forgot to say
You only
that
get to come up once. No, I'm just joking. Go ahead.
Our partners, Plan and Chispa Nevada, are also in support of this, but are in another meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for filling in for them today while everybody's in different rooms. And we will go to the phones. Do we have anyone in support of Assembly Bill 432?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 432, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 689. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, Chair and Committee. For the record, my name is Anwar Green, ANWAR GREEN, and I am a veteran of our United States Air Force. Having served in our country's military, I believe we should all have access to our right to vote, And as such, I'm in full support of AB 432, and I thank Speaker Frierson for being a champion on voting rights. The original legislation around automatic voter registration was a win for the military and the veteran community, and this builds on that. Expanding AVR to health and human services and other agencies allows for more access to register to vote for military members and their families accessing these services. To me, this is a common sense action that benefits our electoral system as a whole, and it continues to ensure that ours remains a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Very definition of democracy. Because of this, I ask that you all support AB 432, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other callers in support of AB 432?
Thank you, Chair. We do. Caller with the last three digits, 169. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, and thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Jennifer Fleischman, Jennifer, Fleischman, Fleischmann, and I am the co-director of organizing at Make the Road Nevada. We all know that DMV forms can be confusing for anyone, but for a non-citizen, the potential consequences of wrongly being on a voter registration list could keep them from ever becoming citizens. I'm sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. In the worst case scenarios, these citizens could even face deportation. I've personally seen the fear in the face of our members who have made this mistake, and while it can be fixed, it is a complicated, long, and expensive process. We have an opportunity to not only increase voter registration among the eligible, but to protect those who are ineligible from this fear. Make the Road Nevada urges this body to invest in our democracy by voting yes on AB 432. Thank you, and thank you for your commitment to our state.
Thank you. Do we have any other callers on the line in support of AB 432?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Caller with the last three digits, 831. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Brooks and committee members. My name is Ceci Alvarado, CECIA, ALBARADO, and I'm the Nevada State Director for Mi Familia Vota. I'm calling in support of AB 432 because I believe that the expansion of automatic voter registration would work to enfranchise large groups of potential voters in Nevada, while also prioritizing the vital security measurements. AB 432 would maintain the current back-end ABR system currently used by the DMV that protects unregistered Nevadans who are not able to provide proof of U.S. citizenship during their time at the DMV. This back-end ABR system will ensure that voters' roles reflect the state's citizenry. I urge you to support AB 432. Thank you.
Caller with the last three digits, 135. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Brooks and committee members. My name is Carrie Durmick, that is KERRYDURMICK, and I'm the Nevada Director with All Voting is Local. All Voting is Local is in full support of AB 432. Everyone who is eligible should have the freedom to vote. Expanding back-end automatic voter registration also reduced election administration costs by processing more registrations through Medicaid, DAHS, and tribal agencies. Back-end AVR replaces thousands of paper voter registration forms that voters would otherwise mail or submit. Processing paper forms are labor-intensive and expensive, requiring data entry and follow-up on missing information or errors. By working with agencies who already collected this data, there will be no need to re-enter information from paper forms, saving local election offices time. Similarly, by updating address information more efficiently, back-end AVR also reduces undeliverable mail and provisional ballots, saving election officials additional money. Please invest in our democracy and pass AB 432. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other callers in support of AB 432?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have several. Caller with the last three digits, 715. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
And I just want to remind the callers to be as brief as possible to make sure that we hear from as many callers as possible. So go right ahead. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Taylor Patterson, TaylorPatterson. I'm a member of the Bishop Paiute Tribe and the Executive Director of Native Voters Alliance Nevada. We are in support of AB 432 because it allows for tribal governments to participate in the automatic voter registration process while still respecting tribal sovereignty. And in respect for time, I'll leave it at that and just say thank you, Assemblyman Watts, for being inclusive to tribal communities in this bill.
Caller with the last three digits, 973. Please press *6 to unmute. Thank you, caller. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Brooks and committee. My name is Tammy Tiger, Tammitiger. I am a citizen of Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and have been a resident of Nevada for over 35 years. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Las Vegas Indian Center, an organization which provides essential services to the greater urban American Indian population of more than 50,000 here in Southern Nevada. LVIC strongly supports Assembly Bill 432 to allow tribal agencies to participate in the state's automatic voter registration system. Currently, even with the AVR system in place at the DMV, our community members who already receive tribal IDs may not seek a driver's license or state ID and have fewer opportunities to register to vote. Nationally, Medicaid covers around 27% of the American Indian and Alaska Native population. Expanding AVR capabilities to the tribal and health and human services agencies will help to fill gaps in access to voter registration for our people who have one of the lowest rates of voter registration. Thank you.
Caller with the last three digits, 085. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Cortez, Alyssa Cortez, Cortes. Good afternoon, Chair Brooks and committee members. Silver State Equality supports AB 432 because it will ensure that eligible Nevadans who want to participate in our electoral process are able to be automatically registered to vote. And I just have to say ditto to make sure we're not taking up too much of other people's time. To ditto to everyone that have spoken before me. So thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So next caller for support AB 432.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The public line is open and working. However, there are no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you. And again, just want to thank the callers for being so concise and efficient with their testimony to make room so that we got to hear from all of them. And who do we have anyone in opposition to AB 432? I don't see any in the room, so we'll go to the phones in opposition to AB 432.
Chair, the public line is open and working. However, there are no additional callers wishing to testify at this time.
All right, thank you. Anyone in neutral? I don't see anyone in neutral here in the room. Anyone on the phones neutral to AB 432?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, and there are no additional callers to testify at this time.
Thank you. With that, I don't know if, oh, no, he's gone. We will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 432, and we will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 443, and we have Assemblyman Yeager here to present that bill for us. It came out of the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections, and it revises the interim committee structure of the Nevada Legislature. Mr. Yeager, please go ahead whenever you get a chance.
Good afternoon, Chair Brooks, members of the Senate Finance Committee. Feel like I was just here. It is nice to be back. For the record, I'm Steve Yeager, representing Assembly District 9 in Southwest Las Vegas, and I'm pleased to present Assembly Bill 443 in its second reprint for your consideration today. This measure revises the way the Nevada Legislature structures its interim activities. The concept of this measure dates back to the 2009-2010 legislative interim and was a recommendation at that time from the Interim Committee to consult with the Director, which unanimously supported what was AB 578 of the 2011 legislative session. In addition, a bill similar to this one was presented in 2017 by your now Senate Majority Leader. The bill before you today revisits the matter and is designed to address the serious continuity issues concerning interim committees that still exist today. In the past, legislative leaders on both sides of the political spectrum have expressed a desire to find a better way to organize the interim process and its structure. One of the issues over the years has been the number of legislators appointed to interim committees or studies who have little to no knowledge of the topics being discussed. Another related issue has been the number of bill draft requests submitted by interim committees or studies and then heard by session standing committees without members who served on those interim committees. The members who had not served on the committee did not have the benefit of sitting through important testimony and the in-depth review that occurred during the interim. The new interim committee structure is established under the provisions of Assembly Bill 443, and I'll go over those very quickly for you in terms of how it works. To summarize, the measure applies to certain policy committees meeting during the interim that would be staffed by the LCB. This proposal, however, does not touch the Interim Finance Committee, the Economic Forum, or the Legislative Commission, and the statutory subcommittees associated with those entities. Section 6 of the bill really is the heart of the proposal. With the exceptions I just noted, this section creates several joint interim standing committees that would parallel the jurisdiction of our normal session standing committees. The names of those committees are on page 6 of the bill, and they will look familiar to you because they're the same committees that we have during the normal legislative session. In terms of the membership of those committees, each would consist of 8 regular members and 5 alternate members. There would be 5 assembly members with 3 alternates and 3 Senate members with 2 alternates. That section also lays out how the members would be appointed. Section 7 establishes, with regards to quorums and voting, that 5 members of a joint interim standing committee constitute a quorum. However, much like our interim studies, any recommended legislation must be approved by the majority of the Senate members and a majority of the Assembly members. Other actions can be taken by a majority of those present. The BDR allocations for the joint interim committees are set forth in Section 4 of the bill. Just like our current interim statutory committees, each joint interim standing committee is allocated 10 bill draft requests to carry forward to the legislative session. Now, there are a couple of exceptions, and those are important. The Standing Interim Judiciary Committee would receive 5 additional BDRs to be dedicated exclusively to juvenile justice topics. The Health and Human Services Interim Committee would also get 5 additional bill draft requests to exclusively dedicate to child welfare issues. And then Natural Resources is going to have a subcommittee of public lands underneath Natural Resources, and they would have 4 bill draft requests to use for the Public Lands Subcommittee. In Section 8, the bill specifies the topics to be reviewed by these committees and indicates they would be established through legislation or as directed by the Legislative Commission. In addition, topics that are within the jurisdiction of the session standing committees would be assigned to those committees to handle as a whole or through subcommittees during the interim. Section 8 also specifies that the Legislative Commission will review the budget and work programs for each of those committees. A lot of the rest of the bill is technical changes. As you might imagine, there are a lot of references in statute to various standing interim committees that we have now. And then the other thing I would like to note is that there was one committee in discussions that we decided not to abolish, and we accomplished this by amendment in the Assembly, by personal amendment on the Assembly floor, and that's the Legislative Committee on Senior Citizens, Veterans, and Adults with Special Needs. That is a very specialized committee, and it was kind of difficult to figure out where to place those topics, so that would be the only one that would still exist outside what's envisioned in this bill. But we did reduce the allocation of the bill draft requests from 10 to 6 because the goal here was not to result in any more bill draft requests than we already have in the interim. So the bill in front of you, at worst, would be sort of neutral in the bill draft requests, and in all likelihood will result in fewer bill draft requests being requested in the interim. So in closing, Chair, this measure is designed to address the conceptual inefficiency others have experienced during the interim structure. We spend a lot of time and money looking into complex policy issues and broad conceptual matters during the interim. I think this will streamline the process. And one other benefit to the measure is I think it'll help the public understand what it is we're doing in the interim. Sometimes the public has a hard time knowing which committees to follow and what they're looking at, but if we're able to mirror them with what followers of the Nevada Legislature are used to, they'll know I want to follow the Government Affairs Committee in the interim or the Judiciary Committee in the interim. So Chair, I know you are all extraordinarily busy, so I will stop there and answer any questions, but I suppose before I do that, because I know it's coming, the fiscal note probably, well, there is no fiscal note on the bill, but there was an appropriation added in the Assembly that was worked in consultation with Ms. Erdos from the LCB, who provided the amount of the appropriation, and that is based on the amount that the interim funding as existed last interim. I have conferred with Ms. Erdos, and I can certainly provide this email to your staff, that the floor amendment that we added in the Assembly does not change their analysis of the fiscal note. They do not believe they would need any additional appropriation to conduct the work other than what is already in Assembly Bill 443 as it exists in front of the committee.
Thank you, Assemblyman Yeager. I didn't see the appropriation in the amended version of the bill. Can you tell me what section it's in, or is that something that it will be separate? 51.7?
Yeah, Steve Yeager, it is in 51.7, so we kind of snuck it in there right towards the end of the bill.
Oh, there you go. All right, thank you. Well, I as somebody who got somehow, I'm not exactly sure how this happened yet. I think it was, I think I was hoodwinked by the boss. I think I served on more interim committees, studies, working groups, task force than anyone in the legislature this last go around, and was on IFC, and so I don't feel like I've ever even stopped being in session. And so so the inefficiencies of that system have really been frustrating. So I think that this makes a ton of sense. But it doesn't, I still think we have far too many bill drafts in the Nevada legislature. And so this doesn't really address that, but at least you didn't get more. So I'm glad about that. So we need twice as much time and half as many bills. I stick to that. But I think this just makes a ton of sense. Senator Kekeffer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions. I think the policy does make a lot of sense, and aligning the responsibilities is somewhat logical, I think. Just maybe despite the fact that the majority leader pushed it earlier in her career, and I may have opposed it at the time. I don't know. It's entirely possible.
I just would like to know how many interim committees both of you would like to sit on.
But I do, so as it relates to the appropriation, it is for the cost of Legislative Council Bureau relating to supporting the work of interim studies during the upcoming interim. Actually, that's dated for the interim that's ending. If you look at section 51.7, for the sum of $35,000 for the cost of Legislative Council Bureau related to supporting the work of interim studies during the 2021-22 interim. I guess that's 2020. Okay, that's the one that's coming up. But we didn't fund any interim studies during the upcoming interim. We've already established that. So I don't know why we need the appropriation since there's no interim studies funded.
Steve Yeager for the record. So here's sort of where we're at, I guess. This bill is out there moving through the legislature, but we don't know yet if it's going to get enacted. If this bill does not get enacted and passed, then we would be left with the structure that we currently have, which means there'll be 6 interim studies. But those haven't really been figured out yet, I don't think, right? It's one of those things in the last day of session or towards the I guess tomorrow or today, we figure out what those studies are going to be. And so this bill envisions that those studies that would normally be passed by the legislature will be sort of enveloped in the interim standing committees. So the question that was posed to LCB was, how much money do we need for those interim studies, knowing that they're now essentially going into this bill? So I think what they did was use what the cost of the last interim was, or at least what was budgeted for the last interim. Obviously, last interim was unique because of Zoom and we didn't have as many meetings. So this was their best guess that if this bill were to pass, the additional amounts that would be needed to bring the interim studies into these new joint interim standing committees.
Okay, so I mean, so now the interim standing committees will have all of their normal responsibilities plus all of the responsibilities of the interim study committees, but no additional money for them. Because we did in the budget for LCB that we approved, which we established when we heard a different bill, we didn't appropriate any money to do interim studies. So they're going to do all their work plus the work of the interim studies with the same amount of resources.
Steve Yeager, for the record, and I don't want to get beyond my skis because I don't sit on the money committees, but my understanding was, the interim legislative budget that exists is to sort of staff the interim committees, right? And then the studies are sort of different, right? Because they're almost, you can see them as a supplement to the normal standing committees. So I think the effort here was to recognize that there'll be additional costs associated if we bring the studies
You're about to
into
get saved.
Okay.
Mr. Erdos is coming now.
Oh, I will gladly defer, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Assemblyman Yeager. Mr. Erdos, how are you doing this afternoon?
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to explain what our theory was for the $35,000 because we were uncertain. There's just a lot of uncertainties with the interim studies this time, and we thought that we would just use the same amount from last time and believe that that would cover whatever the theory was for the interim studies this time.
So I appreciate it. So should there be interim studies, this would give LCB the resources to staff them appropriately?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it would.
But we don't have any money in the budget to actually do the studies themselves at this point, right?
We do not.
Okay.
So, and the theory there was we weren't sure whether they were going to be all Zoom or, how it would work, so.
Understood. I just wanted to make sure I was clear. Okay, thank you. And then actually my second question, Mr. Yeager, on page 8, and maybe this is carryover language or we've just never applied it, but in subsection 4 on page 8, talking about compensation for the legislators, it's not, you'll get compensated on your day rate, not only on days that you attend meetings, but on any day that you're working on stuff. So how does that work?
Steve Yeager, for the record, I believe that's carryover language. I'm not sure. There was an intent, at least on my part, it would be what we do now, which is if you attend a meeting, you get your daily rate. But obviously, every single one of us is working on these issues every day of the interim. So I can confirm whether that was somehow already in statute, but it's certainly not my intent to have us compensated for anything other than attending official meetings of the interim legislature, interim standing committees.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Ms. Erdos, for helping us out there. Any other questions for Assemblyman Yeager on Assembly Bill 443? All right, thank you, Assemblyman. And so now we will go to anyone here in the room in support of Assembly Bill 443. Anyone on the phones in support of Assembly Bill 443, please make sure to address the bill and keep your comments brief.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 443, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone in opposition to Assembly Bill 443?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 443, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
All right. Do we have anybody in neutral to Assembly Bill 443?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 443, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. So with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 443, and I am waiting for Assemblywoman Nguyen, my Assemblywoman, to come down and present Assembly Bill 393, and that will be the last bill that we have on this agenda today, the third revised agenda. Never say never. We could always get more bills today, but that's currently what we have in our agenda. And then after that, we would work session But if we could take just a brief 5-minute recess, I mean like a legit 5-minute recess, and see if we can, if Assemblywoman Nguyen will get down here, and I will take a break at the same time. All right, recess over. So, Finance Committee members, if you can make your way back to your seats, we have one bill that we need to hear, and that is Assembly Bill 393. And Assembly Bill 393, just a skinny little criminal justice cleanup bill that we need to hear now. And presenting that bill on behalf of the Committee on Judiciary is Assemblywoman Rochelle Wynn, representing Assembly District 10 in the best part of the state, my neighborhood, and my neighbor and Assemblywoman. And it makes various changes relating to criminal justice. And if you want to briefly describe the bill for us, what it does, and what it costs, then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Rochelle Wynn, for the record, representing Assembly District 10. It's my pleasure to appear for the first time in your committee, Senator Brooks. AB 393, for lack of a better term, is a cleanup bill. The recommendations out of this, it was probably the shortest hearing that we've ever had in Senate Judiciary. It lasted all of, I think 2 minutes. The recommendations came out of this with broad support, unanimous support actually, from the Sentencing Commission as well as the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice. And so this does various cleanup things to a bill that we passed out of the 80th session, which was Assembly Bill 236, which was an omnibus criminal reinvestment act. We put a lot of responsibility on the Sentencing Commission and the executive. Victoria Gonzalez runs it, and so the appropriation in here is to allow her to do the job of collecting the data that we've requested her to do, to show this legislative body the millions of dollars in savings that have come from the enactment of 236. And so that is the appropriation. There was a couple of amendments, mostly clarifying that don't affect that fiscal note. I don't believe Ms. Gonzalez is on the line, but I'd probably get her on the line if you had further questions about the appropriation.
If you could direct us directly to the appropriation, that would be great.
Give me 1 second, if you don't mind, Chair.
The good stuff's usually at the back. It's the punchline.
Section 32.5.
32.5, on page 45, we have a appropriation in FY 21-22 of $75,345 and a appropriation in FY 22-23 for $96,987. Is that the entire appropriation?
That is.
All right. Now, do we have any questions from the committee on what Assembly Bill 393 does and what Assembly 393 costs? Where's the 50 pounds of marijuana? Oh, there it is. That's the section. Yeah.
Senator, would you like me to clarify why we needed that amendment?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
In Assembly Bill 236 from the 2019 session, we did some evidence-based reform regarding marijuana convictions, drug offenses, and how they were categorized and how they were classified. And we did that with other drugs such as methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, other illicit drugs. Unfortunately, we did not include marijuana. So under the current statute, marijuana possession was a greater penalty than it was for some of our other more illicit drugs. And so this is intending to clean up that language.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions on the bill? Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So can we go back to section 32.5 with that appropriation? So is that strictly just for that department to collect data, and what and tell me a little bit more about the data they'd be collecting.
Thank you. Rochelle Wynn for the record. Thank you for that question. We essentially created enough work for probably 10 positions, and we have one person there that is doing an incredible job. The intent and what happened, and I'm sure I could phone a friend here if Assemblyman Yeager wanted to come down, is with Assembly Bill 236 from the 2019 session. The intent of that bill was we were going to collect information and data on the savings of those changes that we made to the criminal justice system, so that it could actually be reinvested back in our communities for like pretrial therapy, like other types of programming. So their job is, and with this bill, we've given them some even more data to collect to see how much money we are saving. I think it was estimated that we would save tens of millions of dollars over a 5-year period of time, and this is to allow them to actually have the resources to be able to collect and maintain and analyze that data.
I can't help but find the irony in that we're spending money to document savings. Is that kind of what I heard?
It is, Rochelle Wynn for the record, it is to a certain extent because we have made lots of anecdotal decisions on whether or not the criminal justice reform decisions that we have made in the past are actually saving us money, actually keeping our communities safe. This allows us to make decisions going forward to know whether or not the decisions that we're making are evidence-based and have like a record of showing that we are saving that. It may seem like, we are spending money to collect data to analyze how much we are saving, and that is in fact true, but the savings are so much more potentially, and it'll allow us to make better, like more reasoned, evidence-based decisions going forward in the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Assembly Bill 393? All right, I don't see any. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just will note this one came out of the Assembly unanimously with all those present, and it came out of your committee unanimously as well. All right, great. So with that, I will go to testimony in support of Assembly Bill 393. Now, please keep it brief and speak just to the bill, please. So anyone here in the room wants to testify in support of Assembly Bill 393? Seeing none, we'll go to the phones. And can we see if we have anyone in support on the phones, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 393, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone in opposition to Assembly Bill 393 on the phones?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 393, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
All right. Do we have anyone neutral to Assembly Bill 393?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 393, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
All right. Thank you. With that, we can close the hearing on Assembly Bill 393. Appreciate it, Assemblywoman Wynn. And we will now move into work sessions. So we'll give Mr. Thorley and Mr. Hartz a minute to collect their stuff and change gears out of bill hearing gear and into work session gear. And if you would like, if you could, and we'll probably take this in a couple of chunks based upon where moving parts are and things like that. So if you want to, just give me 1 second. Give us one more little brief recess. I'm going to go through the list and do a little juggling here. So yeah, so just stand by, committee, just stand by for 1 minute, and we're going to go through this list. All right. We've got our list together, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bills to work session, and we can do those quick because we already heard them. Everything's cool. Got it all figured out. So, and then we can eat because I am starving. So, recess over. Let's do it. And so, Mr. Thorley, Mr. Hartz, just let us know if you can run down that list for us on the bills that we will be work sessioning. And then we're still waiting on a few moving parts on a few of the others. We'll take a break and come back at some time today. Has to be today. And we will work session those other bills. So, Mr. Thorley, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The bills that will be up for work session now, I'll do this in two chunks. The first set will be bills that were previously heard by the committee, and then the second set will be bills that were heard this morning. From the bills that have been previously heard in prior meetings, Assembly Bill 230, Assembly Bill 266, Assembly Bill 349, Assembly Bill 376, Assembly Bill 387, Assembly Bill 445, and Assembly Bill 489. Of the bills that were heard earlier today, the bills that will be up for work session are Senate Bill 463, AB 416, and AB 432.
Yes.
I can go through the list again if that would be helpful. AB 230, AB 266, AB 249, AB 376, AB 387, AB 445, AB 489, SB 463, AB 416, and AB 432.
Mr. Thorley, can we move the 489 to the next list, the later list? But besides that, all the rest. Yes, sir. And can we go ahead and move 266 off of that list? No, just joking. Haha. And we can start with Assembly Bill 230 whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Alex Hartz, Fiscal Analysis Division. AB 230 is the first bill on the work session. This bill was heard on May 29th. It was presented by Assemblyman C.H. Miller. Assemblyman Miller explained the bill. The intent of the bill is to oriented about juvenile justice, and it removes certain crimes that would otherwise require the automatic certification or trying of a juvenile as an adult. There was information presented that indicated that notwithstanding that provision, a judge could still certify as an adult a juvenile on a case-by-case basis. There was testimony provided in support of the bill. There was no testimony provided in opposition, nor was there testimony provided in neutral. There is no fiscal impact of the bill to the Division of Child and Family Services as well as the Department of Corrections based upon fiscal notes submitted, although the staff would note that the Division of Child and Family Services fiscal note indicated that they could not determine at this time whether there would be an impact going forward. The Department of Corrections fiscal note indicated they anticipated a savings in the inmate-driven category as a result of a lower number of juveniles being incarcerated in their facilities. Clark County did indicate that there was a fiscal note for the county as a result of the bill. There are no amendments on the bill. There are no amendments pending on the bill. If the committee wishes to approve this bill, the motion would be do pass as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartz. Any question on Assembly Bill 230? All right, seeing none, take a motion to do pass as amended. I have a motion from Senator Dennis, a second from Senator Ratty. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. And Assembly Bill 230 passes unanimously, and we will assign that floor statement to, I'll take that. I'm just going to start and go around. So that one's mine, and we can move on to 266.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assembly Bill 266 was heard by the committee on May 27th. The bill is in its second reprint. Assemblywoman Miller presented the bill and indicated in her testimony that the amendment that was adopted by the Assembly when it came out of the Assembly created a fiscal impact for the Nevada Department of Education. NDE did submit an unsolicited fiscal note that is available on Nellis, indicating that additional staff time would need to be allocated toward implementing the provisions of the bill. They are estimating overtime costs, not new positions, but overtime costs for existing positions at $24,123 in FY22 and $3,583 in FY23. Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez with the Nevada Department of Education was on the Zoom and confirmed that the department's fiscal note is still valid on the bill in its second reprint. There was testimony in support from the Clark County Education Association and the Nevada State Education Association. There was no testimony in opposition. and there was no testimony in neutral. There were no additional amendments discussed, and staff is not aware of any additional amendments. Accordingly, if the committee wishes to move the bill as is, the motion would be to do pass as amended. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions on Assembly Bill 266? All right, seeing none, take a motion to pass. I have a motion from Senator Dennis. I have a second from Senator Ratty. Tag you're it. And any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Nays are Senator Kekeffer, Senator Hammond, Senator Gansert, Senator Gokachia. It passes with the majority, and I will sign that floor statement to Senator Dennis. All right, we can move on to the next one, Assembly Bill 349.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assembly Bill 349 was heard on May 27th. It was presented by Assemblyman Watts. There was a conceptual amendment presented. It was a one-page document dated, titled Conceptual Amendment to AB 349, dated May 27th, 2021. The conceptual amendment proposes to strike the proposed changes in Section 9, subsection 4. It indicates to strike the language in Section 6 and amend the new language in Section 7 of the bill to read, "The regulations adopted pursuant to this section shall not provide for a fee in excess of $2 for an inspector to be licensed at additional locations of a test station." And then the final part of the conceptual amendment was to strike Section 8 of the bill. There was discussion with regard to the intent of the conceptual amendment and whether that removed the Department of Motor Vehicles fiscal note. The information provided was somewhat confusing by the department. Staff will go over some information that the department subsequently provided to staff in clarification. There was several individuals testified in support. There was opposition testimony also provided, as well as neutral testimony that was provided on the bill. Subsequent to the hearing, the staff worked with the Department of Motor Vehicles to receive an updated fiscal note and better understand the department's impact, or how the bill would impact the department. At this time, it appears to staff that there would be a fiscal impact of $164,144 in fiscal year 22 and a fiscal impact of $51,734 in fiscal year 23. Both of those impacts are highway fund impacts, primarily related to the reduction in fee revenue that would be collected as a result of actions within the bill to extend the time frame a new vehicle could go before being required to receive a smog test, as well as the change in the fee revenue associated with an inspector being able to work at multiple locations versus being required to pay a fee for each location. If the committee wishes to approve this bill, the committee's motion, with the conceptual amendment, the committee's motion would be to amend and do pass as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Do we have any questions on Assembly Bill 349?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Thorley.
Sorry, there's also a proposed amendment from Clark County that the bill sponsor, Assemblyman Watts, forwarded to fiscal staff that he is supportive of and is available on Nellis. Under today's meeting and under the exhibits, it's AB 349 R2 proposed amendment. And happy to walk through that amendment if it would be beneficial to the
If you
committee.
could, while we're digging it up, that'd be great.
So this again came from Clark County. The county indicated that it didn't have a way on its own to collect fees from the admission stations. Since the DMV is already collecting those, they had recommended an amendment that would allow the Board of County Commissioners to, by ordinance, impose an additional fee for certifying emission control compliance, and then upon notification from the county that such an additional fee had been adopted by ordinance, that the DMV would then collect that additional fee in the same manner that it collects the other fees. So that is staff's understanding of the proposed amendment.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on Assembly Bill 349 and or the proposed amendment? Okay, seeing none, I would take a motion to amend and do pass as amended. I have a motion from Senator Ratty. I have a second from Senator Dennis. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just to be clear, that includes both the
Yes, sir, that includes-
conceptual amendment that was discussed by the sponsor on the 27th and the Clark County amendment.
And so the motion would be to amend and do pass as amended with both of those amendments, both Assemblyman Watt's conceptual and Clark County's submitted amendment. And I have a motion from Senator Ratty, second from Senator Dennis. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Senator Gocochea, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support it out of here, but I want to reserve my right when we put it all together. I like some of the policy, but some of it I really don't like. So when we get to the floor.
I will be kind and not assign you the floor statement then, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Because you're next in line, buddy. All right. So any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. I have a nay from Kiekefer, Hammond, Gansert, and I have reservation of a vote from Senator Gocochea. And so the motion passes with the majority, and I will assign that floor statement to Senator Dennis again as one of my resident transportation experts, so that you can answer Senator Kiekefer's questions. I'm not Senator Kiekefer, Senator Pickard's questions, excuse me. All right, and so that moves us to Assembly Bill 376, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assembly Bill 376 in its second reprint was presented by Assemblywoman Torres on May 29th. She presented the bill and explained the various provisions of the bill, including that the bill would enact the Keep Nevada Working Act. There was also testimony provided that the bill, included in the bill, is an appropriation of $500,000. This is in section 26.5 of the bill. An general fund appropriation of $500,000 to the immigration clinic at the UNLV School of Law for the purpose of providing pro bono legal services relating to immigration law. Professor Michael Kagan also provided testimony on the bill. In its original submission, the bill would have imposed some duties upon the Office of New Americans. However, a subsequent amendment that was adopted transferred those duties related to the Keep Nevada Working Task Force to the Lieutenant Governor's Office. Assemblywoman Torres did indicate that the Lieutenant Governor's Office did not submit a fiscal note related to any impact that the administrative duties of the Keep Nevada Working Task Force would have. There is language in the bill and testimony was provided that the Lieutenant Governor's Office would seek gifts, grants, and donations. Assemblywoman Torres also pointed out that the duties of the task force in Section 20 include the word may, which is permissive language. There was numerous individuals that called in or were present in the room and offered testimony and support. There were 3 individuals that provided testimony in opposition. There was no testimony in neutral. There were no amendments discussed, and staff is not aware of any proposed amendments. Accordingly, if the committee wishes to move forward with the bill, the motion would be to do pass.
Thank you, Mr. Thorley. Any questions from the committee on Assembly Bill 376? All right, seeing none, I would take a motion to pass. I have a motion from Senator Dennis, a second from Senator Ratty. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. And the nays are Senator Gokachia, Senator Sievers-Gansert, Senator Hammond, and Senator Kekeffer. It passes with the majority. And this floor statement assignment will go to Senator Dennis, co-sponsor of the bill. And that takes me to Assembly Bill 387. And Mr. Thorley, Mr. Hartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assembly Bill 387 was heard on May 29th. Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno presented the bill. While she was summarizing the provisions in the bill, also discussed the fiscal notes submitted on the bill as introduced. Sorry, organizing my notes. There was also a conceptual amendment discussed, and that is available on Nellis attached to yesterday's meeting of Senate Finance Committee. Staff's understanding of the conceptual amendment is that it was brought forward in order to resolve a conflict between Assembly Bill 287 and this bill, Assembly Bill 387. And it would establish one consistent definition of the term midwife for the purposes of both chapters 440 and 442 of Nevada revised statutes. The conceptual amendment would also, no, that's what it does, sorry. So it just resolves that conflict between the two bills. There was no testimony in support. 2 individuals called in with testimony in, 3 individuals called in with testimony in opposition, and the State Pharmacy Board did provide testimony in the neutral position, indicating that any concerns they had previously had about potential non-compliance with pharmaceutical regulations had been addressed, so they had no issues. With the conceptual amendment, then, Mr. Chair, the motion would be to amend and do pass.
All right, do we have any questions on Assembly Bill 387? Senator Dennis.
Not so much questions. I still continue to have some issues on some of the policy, but I think it's something that we should move. So I'm going to vote for it as we move it forward, but I'm going to reserve my right as I have more chance to really dig into those particular issues.
Thank you, Senator. Do we have any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, so seeing none, I would take a motion to amend and do pass from Senator Ratty and a second from Senator Cannizzaro. Do I have any discussion on that motion? Senator Gokachia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to support this bill. You know, midwives are an option, but If you've got a hospital available, go to the best choice. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And so any other comments or questions on Assembly Bill 387? And seeing none, all in favor, aye. I kind of did that out of order, didn't I? But we have a motion and a second, and we had discussion, and all in favor, aye. All against, nay. Senator Hammond. And so the motion passes unanimous, or not, excuse me, with the majority. And we'll sign that floor statement to Senator Canizaro, please. And that brings us to Assembly Bill 445.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assembly Bill 445 was heard on May 29th. The bill was presented by Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. She was joined by the State Treasurer as well as Mr. Miles Dixon, who helped explain the bill. The bill has performed several actions, including transferring the Office of the Grant Procurement, Coordination, and Management, which is currently in the Department of Administration, to the Office of the Governor, as well as renaming the office as the Office of Federal Assistance. Additionally, the bill creates a Nevada grant matching program to provide funds to certain public agencies, tribal governments, and nonprofit organizations as a source of matching funds for federal grants. And it requires that certain money be transferred from the Abandoned Property Trust account as a source of funds for the Nevada Matching Grant Program. Additionally, and importantly, it makes appropriations. On page 19 of the bill, in section 29.6, it proposes to make general fund appropriation to the Office of Grant Procurement, Coordination, and Management in the sum of $279,979 in fiscal year 22 for personnel and operating costs and costs of upgrades to the grant management system. Additionally, in section 29.63, there is an appropriation of state general funds to the newly created Office of Federal Assistance in the sum of $1,091,010 in fiscal year 23 for personnel and operating costs and costs of upgrades to the grant management system related to carrying out this act. Additionally, in section 29.7, there is appropriated from the state general fund to the Office of the State Controller for personnel costs related to additional reporting of federal funding that would result from the grant matching program. Those appropriations are $89,537 in fiscal year 22 and $115,772 in fiscal year 23. And then finally, in section 29.7, there is language that requires, as soon as practicable after the close of fiscal year 21 or the current fiscal year, the state controller shall transfer $1 million from the balance of the Abandoned Property Trust account to the grant matching account for the purposes of granting out those funds as match for federal grants. Senator Keykeper had asked a question during the meeting in terms of the balance of that of the Abandoned Property Trust account, and staff's understanding it is approximately $42 million. At this time, staff would note that after the first $7.6 million of that balance in each year is transferred to the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund, this $1 million transfer would occur. The balance of that is then transferred as an unrestricted revenue source to the general fund. There was testimony, several individuals testified in support. There was no testimony in opposition, nor was there testimony in neutral. There are no new amendments or conceptual amendments presented. So, Mr. Chair, if the committee wishes to approve this bill, including the various appropriations that I identified, the motion would be to do pass as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Hartz. Appreciate that. Any questions from the committee? Senator Keykeper.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. The Treasurer also had followed up with me to talk about the status of that account, and his detailed expert analysis was that it was flush with cash. So that sounds accurate as to the feedback I've received from Mr. Hartz as well. Thank you.
I mean, I'm no treasurer or anything, but that sounds good. Okay. So, any other questions or comments on Assembly Bill 445? All right. Well, I would look for a motion to do pass as amended. I have a motion from Senator Dennis, a second from Senator Kekeffer. All in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. Passes unanimously, and I'll sign that floor statement to Senator Kekeffer, please. All right. Now we'll move to Senate Bill 463.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 463 was heard earlier today. It was presented by a cool guy named Wayne Thorley. That cool guy walked the committee through the bill, explained the provisions of the bill. The bill includes a $3.8 million general fund appropriation to the Nevada Department of Education to be allocated to 12 charter schools identified in the bill in FY 2022 and 9 charter schools also identified in the bill in FY 2023 as one-time funding as a result of those charter schools receiving less funding under the People Center funding plan than the calculated FY 2020 hold harmless amount. There were Victor Salcido with the Charter School Association provided testimony in support, as well as 3 individuals associated with various charter schools also provided testimony in support. Chris Daly with the NSEA provided testimony in opposition, in addition to Brian Rippett with the president of the NSEA. John Sandy, on behalf of Connections Charter, provided testimony in neutral. There were no amendments discussed, so if the committee wishes to move forward, the motion would be to do pass.
Thank you, Mr. Thorley. Does the committee have any questions on Senate Bill 463? All right, Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to know how the cool guy got so cool. That's it, Mr. Chair, just trying to put some levity in all this.
I will check with Mr. Hartz on that later, offline. Possibly a legal opinion. Okay, so any questions on Senate Bill 463? All right, I would take a motion to do pass. I have a motion from Senator Dennis. I have a second from Senator Hammond. Any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. That motion passes unanimously, and I'll assign that floor statement to Senator Hammond, please. That brings us to Assembly Bill 416.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assembly Bill 416 was heard this morning. It was presented by Mr. Warren Hardy, representing the Council for a Better Nevada. This bill calls for the annual audit of certain aspects of the Nevada system of higher education. This bill makes an appropriation to the Legislative Council Bureau. It makes an appropriation to the Legislative Fund, technically, for use by the Audit Division of the Legislative Council Bureau for overtime and travel costs related to conducting the audit. The appropriation is in the amount of $80,250 in fiscal year 22 and $128,750 in fiscal year 23. There are no amendments. This bill becomes effective July 1, 2021. If the committee wishes to approve this bill, the motion would be do pass as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Hartz. And do we have any questions from the committee on Assembly Bill 416? Seeing none. I have a question here from Senator Severs-Gansert.
Thank you. Just a comment. Under Section 1A, it talks about auditing the sources and uses of
money privately donated to each school within the system, including without limitation, adherence to the terms of and agreements of the donations. I think some of that information is probably confidential, but I'm going to support the bill, but I'm not 100% sure all of that is readily available public information.
Senator Kieckhofer?
Yeah, we did, thank you, we did have a problem with that. There was an issue emerged, right, when there was a donation to UNLV regarding the medical school and the confidentiality over some of that. So it's a solid point by my colleague.
All right, any other discussion on Senate Bill 416? Sounds good. I would take a motion to pass. Do pass as amended. Thank you, Senator Dennis. So I take a motion do pass as amended. Oh, I have a motion from Senator Ratty. Second from Senator Dennis. Any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none. All in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. And we will pass that, and we'll continue to investigate that over the next few hours. And I'll assign that floor statement to Senator Dondero Loop, please. That brings us to the last bill on this work session before we recess, and that is Assembly Bill 432.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assembly Bill 432 in its second reprint was discussed earlier today. Assemblyman Watts presented the bill. The bill expands automatic voter registration requirements to certain executive branch agencies. Assemblyman Watts discussed the fiscal notes from both the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services and the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange, and indicated that with a change in the effective date of the legislation, that those two agencies no longer have a fiscal impact associated with this bill in the 2021-23 biennium. Administrator Steve Fisher with the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services was on the Zoom meeting and confirmed that understanding that Welfare and Supportive Services will not have a fiscal impact in the upcoming biennium. There are two appropriations in the bill. One appropriation is to the Department of Motor Vehicles. If I can find the page number real quick. On page 36, section 32.7 includes a general fund appropriation, so not a highway fund, a general fund appropriation to the Division of Field Services within the Department of Motor Vehicles in the amount of $48,233 for computer programming costs related to the automatic voter registration legislation. And staff would just note that that is general fund and not highway fund because the voter registration duties of the Department of Motor Vehicles is not an authorized expense under the highway fund statutes. Then under section 32.3, there is a general fund appropriation of $736,391 in FY22 and $346,439 in FY23 to the Secretary of State for personnel costs to develop processes and systems for automatic voter registration with the various executive branch agencies as defined in section 2 of AB 432. Various individuals, both on the phone and present in the committee room, got up to support the bill. There was no testimony provided in opposition or neutral. There were no amendments presented. So if the committee wishes to move forward, the motion would be to do pass.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions on Assembly Bill 432? All right, seeing none, I take a motion to pass. A motion from Senator Ratty. Can I get a second? Second from Senator Dennis. Any discussion on the motion? Senator Gocochea. Thank you, sir. Do we have any other comments or questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the nays are Senator Gocochea, Senator Sievers-Gansert, Senator Hammond, and Senator Kekeffer. The motion passes with the majority, and we'll assign that floor statement to Senator Cannizzaro. All right. That is the last bill on our work session, and we will be recessing and continuing to work on some bills that have pieces coming in and things going on. And so I believe we'll be going to a floor here pretty soon as well, and the assembly's in right now, I believe. And we will reconvene after that at the call of the chair. And so just keep an eye out for a updated fourth revised agenda.